Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mortgage Tech Talks. As always, I'm your host, Tom. Massimo is away again this week. He's got his jaw surgery, and I think he's still actually. I don't know if I told you this, Maryah. So, I'll say who the guest is. Maybe I let it slip there a little bit, but my esteemed guest, who we'll reveal in just a second, I'll just let you know that I got a picture from Massimo last night, and he looks different. He does look a little bit different, but I think he looks good. And his Face ID, I was like, oh, does your Face ID, your phone has that Face ID? It's like, does that still recognize you?
hmm
And he's like, yeah, actually it does. So it's not so different that that Apple,
Okay, that's
Steve
good.
Jobs still recognizes him. So that's what matters. But I guess we've been leaving the audience in suspense, especially for the listeners, maybe the folks who are watching on YouTube. I've already guessed it, but my guest today is Maryah. She is a member of the Blue Mortgage team here. She's been with us for a couple of years now, many years now. Been with us pretty close to the beginning and kind of with us all along the way. You've kind of done a little bit of everything, Maryah. You've done some visual stuff, you've done some sales stuff, you've done some calls, videos, whatever you name it. But what I wanted to talk,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit of everything. So I think we'll get into, I think will be useful for the audience is some of the stuff I think that you're really kind of have a lot of expertise in. We'll get to that in a second, but maybe just before we dive into some of the good content and what you can really help with the audience and listeners. Love to maybe just for the sake of an intro, just maybe tell the listeners kind of who you are and I guess maybe a little bit about your story and I guess what kind of got you here to be sitting in the
Sounds
seat that you
good.
are.
So, hey everyone. First of all, I want to thank you guys for listening to this podcast. It's my first time, but I have been here in the background since the beginning. And for those who don't know me, I am Maryah. My last name, you can pronounce it like Julia. And I have been working at Blue for just over 2 years, as Tom just mentioned. I did a little bit of everything from social media to sales to marketing to just everything. I started here as a part time when I was in school for marketing. I was doing a BBA in business with a major in marketing and actually never finished that, but maybe we can cut that part out.
No, I'll keep it. It's okay. I mean, honestly, I think I don't know if the people listening agree, but these that's post-secondary degrees, I think they're getting less and less important. I honestly think so. I mean, there's obviously value to it and you learn, and I think it does show that, you're able to kind of stick to something for a period of time and see it through. But I think for you, I mean, you kind of had other things pop up and extenuating circumstances, and it's not what it was in the 80s, I guess I'll put it that way. Like 80s, it was
Yeah,
like, you had to get a degree or else you couldn't even walk in the front door. But less and less, and I think, where there's so much online learning and things are moving so quickly,
exactly.
it's less and less important. But yeah, I think that's kind of as you were doing, I don't know if you were doing the degree when we were introduced. I think it was around that time
Yep.
maybe. Yeah, okay, yeah, you were doing
Yeah,
it
I
at
did it for like another year,
what was the
maybe.
college called again? It was one of those maybe a bit
It was
smaller.
a
Yeah, I forget.
Camosun College in
Okay.
Victoria, BC.
I don't remember that name, and I've never heard of it since. So I don't know. Maybe it's big out there, but if people in
Yeah.
Victoria know it, maybe let us know. So thanks for that. And I think it's kind of interesting your path because you did do a little bit of everything, and I think for you it was a lot of trying to figure it out and see your passion exists. And it's a path I think a lot of people walk. And success is when opportunity meets preparation, right? Where it's like, okay,
hmm
you don't know exactly what the success is going to look like, but if you stay prepared and you keep the door open to opportunities, you really don't know what's going to walk through those doors. So I think your story is a really good example of that. All right, well, maybe we'll do a bit of a hard transition. What I really do want to spend some time today, because these are things that I think you have taught me about, and I think it's stuff that a lot of people we're talking to these days, it's top of mind, kind of given the state of the market. And what that is social media. But I don't want to just talk about social media and say, yeah, you know what, make sure you record videos and make sure you use the right hashtags and make sure,
Post reels,
yeah,
just
little things like,
important content, when to post.
yeah, I mean, that's all stuff that I think people have heard before, or I hope so at least. And honestly, people use social media all the time. Like I don't know if you were telling me this, but someone was telling me they use TikTok more than they use Google now for search. It's like, hey, how do I make guacamole? They don't type guacamole into Google
Yeah.
anymore. They type that into TikTok, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
nowadays the newer generation, Google, it's like old school thing. They just go to TikTok and like, how do I do this? How do I do
Oh my
that? But
God.
even for business,
Yeah.
it became a thing where you go to your social media when you want to look for business. You don't go to
Hmm.
Google or like maybe I'm giving out my age here, but we used to have those yellow pages. Like, people don't do that anymore. They just go to social
Yeah,
media and
it's all there.
that's about it. And kind of that's why it's so important nowadays for you. I don't even say to have like a presence, because when you talk about presence, people think about numbers, and that's not what the point is. It's actually about giving out content that will be educative to your clients or potential clients. So then when they are doing that search, you pop up even if you don't have a huge amount of followers, because the content that you're putting out there, it's helpful, so people are saving it, or people are just like
Yeah,
forwarding it or saving it to watch later. So that kind of helps you pop up, so when people are going to research on social media instead of
yeah.
Google, you just
You pop,
pop up.
you pop up. Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
no, I think it's. I mean, first of all, the first point you made, where yeah, people just search there. I think it's true. I mean, I think even Erica, my wife, she like looks up a restaurant. It's like now she goes, she doesn't go to the yellow pages anymore. She doesn't go to Google anymore. She now goes to their Instagram and will like, say, okay, let's actually look at pictures of the food that people have taken, which
Yeah.
is cool. But the other thing you said, and maybe this is maybe the first, I think, hack, which is a little bit because yeah, all this stuff around yes, post and do this. People have heard it all before. The first one I want to talk about is kind of you were alluding to it, but I want to kind of nail it, which is really kind of narrowing it on a niche. I mean, I think a lot of people are having conversations like this. A lot of people are doing it. There's a lot more noise out there, right? And so
Mhm.
I think that the hack or the tip we want to leave people with is find that niche and don't be afraid to go super narrow with it and
Mhm.
super deep with it. And so maybe I'll give a couple examples that I've seen, and you can kind of see what else you've seen out there.
Mhm.
Where if you just have a post out there that's just like, hey, what is a variable rate? That's not so narrow, right? That's really anybody who in Canada would ever want to get a mortgage. That's like one of the first questions. And so, yeah, it's important. And maybe that's something, a conversation you do have with people once they're there, but it's not the right thing for social media because, hey, if you say, what is variable rate in Instagram, you're not going to stand out above the noise. What I've seen work really well is be very niche. And the example I'll give is that there is, and some of the listeners might know about this, a maneuver called the Smith maneuver, where basically, mortgage that you can continue using and you pay down. As you're paying it down, you get that money back as a line of credit. And then once you get that money back as a line of credit, you basically invest it in whatever you need to invest in. So without going into the details of what that maneuver is, there's one person on social media that's all she posts about. Like I've seen like in the past week like 5 posts about it, and you think, I did a 2-second explanation. You think, okay, how deep can you go? But she went really, really deep, and I don't know actually specifically, but I would imagine if I type that into, I see her on LinkedIn, she can be right near the top. So instead of
Yeah.
just saying what's the variable rate, she talked about a very, very specific, like specific to Canada maneuver that it's like very advanced people would do, but it's working for her because she's now going above the noise, right? It's someone who might be
Yeah.
educated, who's interested in this type of thing. She's going to bubble up, right? And so I think that's a really good example. I don't know if you've seen other examples, Maryah, or if you can even
I
in other industries.
Yeah, I did even in the mortgage industry is sometimes you go like, how do I become successful in social media? And people always say like find a niche, but what does that actually mean? What does
Mm,
it mean to find a niche?
mm,
It can be what you said. It's like being the expert in a topic, even if it's just one topic, because then when people are researching about that, you will become the reference
mm.
on that topic. But it can also be like for the mortgage brokers out there, it's like, hey, are you part of a community, or are you a part of a neighborhood?
Yeah,
It's like, for example, I know I am Brazilian, in case I
sure.
haven't mentioned that yet here. And I know that there is this lady that there's a huge Brazilian community in Toronto, and every time someone asks for a mortgage broker, she's the top one out there because she
Huh,
found her niche. She became a mortgage broker, and instead of focusing on all clients, she's like, no, I am Brazilian. I'm going to focus on
right.
that client. So I have seen people just kind of focusing on things that they can relate, because making a sell, and maybe that's just for me, but I think that applies for everyone that works with selling, is people will buy from a person, not from a brand,
Yeah,
right?
it's about the
Depending on
people.
the
Sure,
case.
I think so. Yeah.
So it's like when you find this niche, it's also about being relatable. It's like, okay, people can identify with you, so now they will go look for you within that niche because they
Yeah,
feel like they can trust you.
you said the word trust there too, and I think that's a big part of it too. In that niche is like, okay, this person isn't just, posting something about variable rates just to try and get those
Hmm.
clicks. It's like, okay, this person is in the Brazilian community and I've heard about her and I went to Brazil Fest and I saw her there, right? I don't know if
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, okay, no, she's not just this isn't just a sales tactic, right? This is someone who actually does care about the community. And ultimately that's what it comes down to. And you're not, like you say, you're going to trust a brand, you're going to trust a person. And I think that's what we talk a lot about with our clients in Blue Mortgage. A big part of what we say is, okay, you want to go from transactions to trust, right? Instead of just, okay, I'm going to do your mortgage, that's it. No, I want to build a trusting relationship going forward,
Hmm.
which I think is huge. So, but I think another huge part of finding a niche too, and I think it really helps is that actually helps you differentiate a little bit from for realtor and other referral partners, I would say too. I think that's the other kind of trick. I don't know if this is a hack. I don't know if this is like maybe a mini one, like a bonus one, if you will, where, a lot of people think that at least to start, that a lot of this activity that you'd be doing is about your clients. I see almost for a lot of folks who have big followings on social media mortgage brokers, a lot of their followers are real estate brokers, right? Because actually they're the ones who do want that really up-to-date information. And a borrower, when they look for a house, yes, that's very relevant, but when they're not looking for a house or looking to finance or whatever, it becomes less relevant. So actually for those realtor partners, it becomes that much more valuable to them. Okay, I know so many mortgage brokers, so many people have reached out. I'm
Hmm.
getting exhausted. But if you can be that mortgage broker who's gonna, if I have a Brazilian based client, I'm gonna refer them to you. Or if I'm gonna have a client who is, savvy and knows the Smith maneuver, I know I'm gonna go to this person.
Hmm.
Again, that niche really helps them. And so related to that a little bit, this is an official hack, not one of the like a bonus one. I think you shared this with me, but I think another big value that you can bring to these referral partners, realtor partners is like you, they want to have this content out there, right? They want to be able to educate their clients, be able to regularly do things. So it's about educating them, but then also allowing them to build that same trust with their clients, right? And the more you can do that, you build an ecosystem and a network. And so the hack or the trick, and you can explain it better, is if you are working with a realtor, maybe you're at an event with them, maybe you're just doing a deal with them, whatever it might be,
Hmm.
you can do these like shared posts. Why don't you? You're going to explain it better. I think
Yeah.
I've already
So
butchered it.
it's all
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So when you're making a post on Instagram, there's actually a functionality that you can collaborate with other people. And what that
Collaborate.
means
Okay, that
is
was the word I was
the
looking for.
content,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that means that the content that you were posting, it will also be shared exactly the same into, and nowadays actually you can tag as many people as you want. Before it used to be just one. So now you can tag everyone and it just kind of cross post through all these channels. So like if I have a realtor and then, for example, I don't know, I have multiple realtors, or I have a realtor and a lawyer, or a realtor
Financial
and a
advisor,
company,
right?
like
Whatever.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You can just put all of them and invite them to collaborate on that post. So when they accept, it also becomes a post on their feed for their audience. So you're kind of expanding and getting advantage of the network exposition that they
Yeah,
have already on their followers without having to actually do the hard work of maybe paying for followers or paying to get a post somewhere, because you are collaborating. So it's good both for you, because you were getting your name as a mortgage broker within that audience for the financial advisor, for the realtor, but also for them to get into your audience of like, hey, I was actually needing a
mm-hmm.
financial advisor to do my taxes, or I needed a realtor to help me
Right.
find a house. So now it just kind of helps everyone
It's that network effect.
within that post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other big thing about it too, I was kind of alluding to it, but just to nail it home, is also now that realtor, they have a piece of content on their website that they didn't have to make, or sorry, their profile, I should say, that they didn't have to make, right? I mean, a lot of the more traditional hacks and tips we hear is, okay, go to Canva and do this, or get a picture and put it on and post 3 times a week. That can be the most exhausting part of it. If you can do that on behalf of these realtor partners, they're going to want to associate
Hmm.
with you. It's like, great, every time I hang out with Maryah or I do a deal with Maryah, she does this really kind of great post and it just boosts my credibility. It's great for my audience.
Hmm.
It's a pretty cool thing, and I think it's pretty underrated. And what's cool about it, like in a real example, it would be okay, we go to, we do a deal together, let's say. Maybe it's honestly like you're just taking a selfie with you, like on a Zoom call with someone. Like it doesn't have to be complicated. And you tag
Yeah.
them and you do this collaboration that you described. It's the same asset, right? It's not like it's been
Hmm.
copy and pasted, it's the same one. So again,
Oh yeah.
it's going to be like this network effect that if their followers like it, it's going to boost in the algorithm. If your followers like it, it's just going to boost it even more, and it becomes this like super
Exactly.
post almost. I don't know.
Or
Yeah.
even, for example, when a realtor closes a deal with a client, they both take a picture in front of like that sold sign. They can post, and literally in the caption, they can just be like, "Thanks for put
Mm,
your at
yeah.
in Instagram in there," and then invite you to collaborate. So now you have real people in there that would be like, "Oh, they actually help people." It's not just like
Yeah, it's not
they
bogus. Yeah.
creating fictional testimonials, and it's like, no, they actually close the deal. There's another satisfied client,
Hmm.
and it gives that reassurance for the
Yeah,
client.
I mean, it does, right? It does give them assurance for sure. When you showed me that the first time, I was like, wow, like this is high tech
Yeah,
stuff.
you.
Sometimes I don't know, for a guy who uses tech a lot, sometimes I'm blown away by some of the stuff that other people find basic. But I thought that was
Yeah,
that
I
was cool.
remember you're very impressed.
Yeah, I was like, wow, yeah, yeah. Anyways, you told me that one. We work with another guy named Caden. You've already seen Caden. Caden helps us with, for people who follow me on my Instagram and LinkedIn, we do a lot of videos, kind of these 1 minute videos, and he helps us with those. So he's done a lot of Instagram. So this is more of a general hack, if you will, but I think it's a good one. It has to do with reels versus stories, and so
Hmm.
I don't do this very well, but he works with some real estate agents as well as mortgage brokers who do this really well. So what the tip is basically use the reels to kind of build the trust. So like the reels should honestly be, and the videos, the things you post that are going to be there forever, that should all just be like education, should be things that if someone looked 5 months later, they're going to say, hey, A, this is valuable, and B, he's not trying to sell me anything. He's actually
Hmm.
trying to help me, right? And so that's really how you can build that following. That's great. The tip becomes though is using stories to actually sell. And I agree with this. I'm actually interested in your opinion, Maryah, if you agree. But what he showed in his example, and I think it works really well, is okay, do those reels, build the trust, but in the stories, really kind of hit home the sale. Say, hey, I just helped Bob. I closed the sale. I got the rate that the bank couldn't. I'm crushing it. If you want the same thing, give me a call. And then,
Hmm.
2 hours later, doing another story, just helped whoever, this next
Yeah,
person, whatever it might be. Really tricky deal, but we figured it out. If you are in a similar situation, you got to call me. And it doesn't seem, I don't know why, but it doesn't seem as salesy in that story just because it's a moment in time. What do you
yeah.
think? What do you think?
I think it's that thing that I was kind of alluding a few minutes back. That is, to the moment that you're posting a story, it's more like you being relatable, you showing your day to day, you
Right.
showing what are you working in. To that point, you become like, it becomes more of a personal relationship
Mm,
than actually just them trying to sell. And then for the borrower, it brings them like, oh, this person actually works with other people. It brings almost like they're not just making all these videos, because nowadays it's pretty easy. Anyone can create very fancy videos, very educative, that nowadays, yes, it's a differentiator, but it's not that big of a thing
hmm.
anymore.
Yeah.
So now these stories kind of bridge that gap in between. Okay, I provided value, how can I make myself relatable? Because it's that thing that I was saying, people buy from a person, not from a brand.
Hmm.
It's like, how can they trust me? How can they see that I'm actually going to put their best interest on top of everything that I'm doing in here?
Right.
It's like I'm looking for their success and not for mine.
No, I think it's true. And I think, people have this assumption, I think, a little bit with a reel where it's very thought out. So if I did a reel,
Mm,
like on my profile, it's gonna be there forever. It's like, hey, what's
exactly.
he trying to sell me, right? What's going on here? I think people kind of are on their guard a little bit where with a story, if you do it genuinely, like if you're not trying to actually, bait these stories that you're doing, if you're honestly like, hey, like literally I just got a call with a client and they said, thank you so much. And we were able to do things that the bank couldn't, or whatever the situation might be. If you're honest about that, yes, it does maybe seem salesy on the surface, but as long as it's genuine, I don't think people are taken aback. They're just kind of, okay, well, that's what Tom's doing today, right? He's really
Yeah.
helping people. And so, yeah, I mean, the reels kind of help you with those search engine things, help you build the network, help you build all things. I think the story is that great way to kind of bridge that gap and say, okay, now, hey, I've shown you, I kind of know what I'm talking about. Okay, here's a real life example. This is specifically what I can do. And yeah, it kind of goes from maybe marketing into sales. Maybe that's a way to think of it. But if you do it
Yeah.
genuinely, I think it can be really effective.
And that's something that actually it's very important. It's the genuine part of it.
Yeah,
Because if you start like, oh, I'm going to make a story because people need
yeah,
to know, and then every day you were making the same
yeah.
story and saying the same thing, it's like, okay,
People are
I
pretty
think
smart
this is
about
just
that.
a
Yeah,
script. Exactly, like
yeah.
just a script. So maybe, let's say, for example, every day you do close a deal where you get a better rate than the bank.
Hmm.
Ask our client, like, hey, I'm going to make a post. Can I tag you?
Sure. Yeah.
Like, would you be comfortable with it? And because at that point, hopefully you already have a good relationship with them. If they're a little bit in social media, they would be like, sure. And then maybe if you have a referral thing, just let them know, like, hey, if you share these with your, like, with your friends,
Hmm.
and they close a deal with me, I'll give you a referral bonus.
Yeah.
So then you're already getting like even an extra thing out of it.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, we've been doing examples where it's like, hey, you close a deal, you do a story. Again, like stories, like you said, connecting with the person is the key. And so it can be whatever. Like if in the morning what you did this morning was, drop off your kids, like do that, right? Be like,
Oh,
listen,
100%.
like, work-life balance is really important and family is really important. And for that borrower who wants a family-oriented person to help them, there you go, right? What's another example? Maybe you're just like meeting a realtor for coffee, or maybe you're just doing cold calls trying to reach out. Post that. Show that you're dedicated. Show that you are interested in building these relationships in the community that you're in. Really, as long as you're not just sitting on the couch, I can't think of a
Yeah.
scenario where maybe you wouldn't want to do the story, but if you're genuine with it, I think it's a very
Mm.
natural thing, and it naturally kind of bridges that gap from reels to
Yeah.
the sale itself, for sure.
Yeah, it's about showing you're a real person, right?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, listen, I think between those, I think we've talked about two or three now, kind of hacks. We're running a little on time, but I wanted to give you a chance. I know I've been kind of leading them a little bit, but was there any big one that you've seen? I know we've kind of collaborated to think of these
Hmm.
topics, but is there one that we missed maybe, or one that you maybe want to leave people
There is
with?
one that I
Okay.
really wanted to,
Hmm.
before taking it home
Okay.
with
Should
this,
we
it's
like
something
build some
that
suspense, like a drum roll, or I don't
for
know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, it's something that actually I have been noticing more and more people are doing it. And when I'm in my off time, I'm still having all Blue Mortgage social media logged in my phone, and I started receiving notifications about it. And sometimes I actually go to this, I click in the notification, and I notice that maybe it's something relevant for me sometimes as a person. That is, go live, like live
Okay.
stream
Live stream. Yeah.
on. You can do that on Facebook, you can do that on TikTok, you can do that on Instagram. And I think the most like easy example that I can do right now would be Bank of Canada rate change announcements. Every time it comes out, I'm pretty sure you will have clients calling you crazy, being like, oh my God, what do I do? Does this affect me? Does this not? Go live on the day of Bank of Canada rate announcement. Make a post being like, hey, 7 p.m., I'm going live to answer all your questions.
Mm,
Because sometimes the question that you're answering 5, 10 times to one client, if you do that, people are actually going to join, and you can provide
mm,
that like thought leadership,
yeah.
but also do almost like a Q&A.
Yeah.
Just chat with them and be like, hey, do you guys know what that means? If not, and then you just start talking. And these live streams, you can even then save them to your profile later.
It can be
And it
content
just
later. Yeah.
stays exactly, and then it just stays there forever. That if anyone has a question and they're just doing a search, it will be in there,
They
the
come
live
up.
stream.
Interesting. Yeah, would you do like I mean I'm just curious. There's a Q&A, so it's like, hey, bank account announcement was 10 a.m., but 7 p.m. Okay, we're gonna do Q&A, get all your questions answered. Would you ever do like a live reaction? Like is that a thing people do? I don't know. You know this maybe better than
I mean, there
that's a bit
is some
tough, I
types
guess
of
maybe. Yeah.
live
Yeah.
reactions, but I don't think it would apply to this.
It's a yeah,
I
yeah.
think
It might be tough,
something
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, if people are not comfortable like going live, another option would be go to your stories. We were just talking about stories right now. In your stories, you can add, it's like a box, a question box that people can type it in. And just let people ask questions. But here's the trick: if you don't have clients asking questions, you can go and just ask
Mm,
yourself a question that you want to answer that you think will be valuable. And then you can just leave that questions on the highlights. So if someone sends you a DM later being like, hey, I missed these stories yesterday, or I have a question, you can just kind of forward that, being like, hey, I talk about this in here. If you have any more questions, just let me know and
mm.
we can jump in a call.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's maybe some fear for some people. It's like, yeah, go live is good, but like no one's gonna watch. Like who would watch my go live? And so I think that's maybe a nice bridge to say, okay, well maybe you do the
Hmm.
story and you know maybe you bait your own questions or whatever. And I think that's an option. I think the other thing to keep in mind, at least this is what I see, I think a lot of the platforms are really pushing these types of things. I know I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn more, and I think anytime someone goes live, it's like I get notified, like
Hmm.
any one of my connections go live, I get like 25 different
Notifications, yeah.
notifications. Like it's just crazy. Because I think, I mean, at the end of the day, what they want is people on the platform, engage with the platform,
Hmm.
building that community. And I think these lives are a great way to do
Yeah.
that. So I think that's it. So maybe for the first couple, you want to maybe bait it a little bit and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Realtor or client or
Hmm.
whoever, come join to help with the conversation. But I think you'd be surprised of how much the platform will help too, really
Yeah.
push these things.
But even something if you're like, hey, I'm scared of doing this, invite a realtor. When you go live on these platforms, you can invite other people.
And it
So
could
it's
just be
like
like the
then
two
it
of you
becomes a
talking.
conversation.
Yeah,
Exactly. It just becomes like a conversation that later can be saved in both profiles. You can collaborate. Same thing that we were talking here. So then it gets less scary, and then it doesn't need to be planned.
no, it doesn't.
Sometimes
Yeah,
just being there, it's like, okay, we're just
right,
chatting, like for example me and Tom, and then if this was a live stream, if someone joins, it's like, hey,
right.
Julie, how's it going? Do you have any questions? How,
That's a
like,
good tip.
and then
Totally.
if you remember that person, like, how are the kids, how is the dog, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I mean, that's a really cool way to think of it. Yeah, it's like it could just be like this. Think of it like, okay, I'm just doing maybe a podcast episode where like or maybe I'm just doing a phone call and I want to, shoot the breeze with this realtor because we're very close and we think the announcement was crazy. And so instead of just calling them and having that conversation, making a live stream, worst case scenario, you just have a conversation, the two of you for 30 minutes, like you would have anyways, and it's just recorded,
Hmm.
and some people might find a value. And best case scenario, people join and then you can actually engage and it's interesting. So I think that's a really cool
Yeah,
way to think of it. So
exactly.
awesome. Well,
In worst case scenario, you can just not save the live too.
oh,
If you
that's
feel
it.
comfortable, you're like, hey, it wasn't successful,
Yeah.
just win or learn.
Win or learn. Yeah. If you guys are just like swearing at each other, you have a big fight or whatever, then you just delete it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, I think that's a good place as any to stop for everyone listening and watching, either on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast place. Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time and attention. As always, please like, subscribe, all those types of things. Share with your friends. We are really trying to grow the podcast. And so if you did find this interesting, please do share it with other mortgage professionals you think would find it interesting. It would mean a lot to us. So thanks, Maryah, for joining. And thanks.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thanks. And all the best to all the listeners. Bye for now. Yeah.
Take care, guys.